Traffic and weather together on the 8th. We check the roads right now with Frank Munich.
Well, we're looking at a new problem in the North Bay. This is eastbound 80 at the Solano Parkway. We have a report of a hit-and-run crash. It doesn't look at first blush as if we have the car that was hit blocking a lane. No indications that we have lanes blocked there, but again, that is a first report of a hit-and-run crash with the CHP heading to the scene, eastbound 80 at the Solano Parkway. We have been tracing this crash in San Leandro, westbound 580, just past Dutton Avenue, involving a car that at one point was resting on top of the center divide, now back on its wheels in the center divide, that left-hand shoulder, but no firm confirmation as of yet that has been completely clear. Your next update at 12:28 on the traffic leader KCBS.
Mostly cloudy for your Sunday with another chance of light rain, highs in the low to mid 60s. Partly to mostly cloudy for the coming week with highs for the most part in the 60s. Chance of rain Wednesday through Friday. Right now in San Francisco, it's 56 degrees in Half Moon Bay and Novato, 55 degrees. Livermore, 52, and Saratoga, 51 degrees. Traffic and weather together on the 8th on All News 106.9 and AM 740 KCBS. There have been many studies into personality and dementia, but a new study out of UC Davis shed some new light on the correlations. KCBS's Megan Goldsby reports.
Emory Beck, an assistant professor of personality and individual differences at UC Davis, and her fellow researchers did find a link between having more negative or neurotic tendencies and being diagnosed with dementia, but not when you look at the pathways caused by dementia in the brain.
What we end up seeing is actually a lot more people die with dementia, sort of Alzheimer's, neuromuscular burden in their brain, but don't ever actually get a dementia diagnosis because they were still performing relatively cognitively well.
So she says for the extroverts and people who scored high on conscientiousness, among other things, she says that may mean their personalities and the way they lived their lives was likely helping them cope with the symptoms of dementia, so they were never diagnosed. The good news is that's not you.
I mean, one sort of myth actually about personality is that our personalities don't change. It's sort of been jokingly called the set-like plaster hypothesis. What we know from decades and decades of personality research is actually that personality sort of exhibits what we call these kind of normative changes across the whole sort of course of the lifespan, and that those changes actually tend in the direction that we want them to. So it would be increasing in conscientiousness, decreasing in neuroticism, and so on, which should actually be protective for our health.
She says caretakers can also use the study to figure out how to best support their patient or loved one, for example, helping set a routine for people who score low on conscientiousness. Megan Goldsby, KCBS.
The Alameda County District Attorney's Office has reversed course after excluding some journalists from a media briefing this week. The action was roundly criticized by First Amendment advocates as being unconstitutional. Emily Raguso, founder of the Berkeley Scanner, was not allowed to enter a news conference held Wednesday by District Attorney Pamela Price's office. It cited a requirement for media members to have an official press credential, quote, issued by a bona fide national news network, local news affiliate, or a long-standing independent news journal. In a statement issued Saturday, Price's office said the district attorney is now taking the lead on working with First Amendment and media ethics experts in developing clear media credential guidelines to balance public safety and accommodating journalists. San Francisco is piloting a bike parking program aimed at providing riders with secure short-term space for their bicycles. As KCBS's David Welch reports, the hanging racks resemble something you'd find in a garage.
Run bike hanging facilities are popular in Europe, and San Francisco's two-year test is similar, but on a more modest scale.
This idea is a mayor-supported pilot that provides secure, medium-term, and aesthetic bike parking.
Stephen Chun is with San Francisco's Municipal Transportation Agency. He mentioned aesthetics. The hooks have just enough design flair to make them both functional and easy to look at. They were by Yerba Buena's Community Benefits District, and they fill a short-term parking need for cyclists.
Users will download the app and have access to this secure hangar.
The hangars provide 12 spaces at 2 separate locations, one near the Metreon downtown and the other on Howard and 2nd. Renting a hook is cheap, 5 cents per hour, and the city plans to launch the program early next year. If it's successful, they hope to have more in the future. In San Francisco, David Welch, KCBS.
Free parking, couple months free rent, that's what landlords are offering to entice new renters to sign leases. KCBS's Raquel Maria Dillon tells us what's behind it.
In October, about 40% of listings in San Francisco and Oakland featured attractive incentives like free rent or parking, and that's much higher than the national average. This is all according to a recent study from Zillow. Half of listings in San Jose offered these freebies. Orphe DeLonghi, a senior economist at Zillow, says these concessions are most common at large apartment complexes and during this end-of-year lease signing slowdown. He says it's the result of a long overdue mini building boom.
You're basically going to see more incentives. Landlords don't have as much bargaining power, and so they have to offer more to renters in order to attract them.
But DeLonghi says it's not enough to offset some of the highest housing costs in the country. He says that's caused by years of failing to build enough units to meet the demand. I'm Raquel Maria Dillon, KCBS.
Warren Buffett gave away almost $1 billion this past Thanksgiving, but he's having trouble giving away money as fast as he makes it. I'm Jeff Goldman of Fortune Magazine with the Fortune Business Update. Every year around this time, Buffett makes donations to the foundation named after his wife and 3 foundations established by his 3 children, all of whom are now between age 65 and 70. Separately, Buffett made donations totaling $5 billion in June. Since he started making regular donations 17 years ago, Buffett has given away a total of $50 billion. Back then, he didn't have $50 billion. But the stock price of his company, Berkshire Hathaway, just keeps rising, so that today, even after all those donations, he now has $121 billion. Buffett has long said he'll give away 99% of his wealth, much of that after he dies. At age 93 today, he says he's feeling fine. I'm Jeff Goldman.
A new survey says more education is needed in California about teens accessing emergency contraception in pharmacies. Karen Adams reports.
Researchers say teens are having a tough time buying Plan B at pharmacies because of a lack of information.
To us, what that indicates is not necessarily a lot of pharmacies trying to prevent minors from getting this, but just the pharmacists not knowing that minors have a right to access emergency contraception.
Study author Catherine Cohen at the UCLA Law Center goes on to say state and federal laws are adding to the confusion out there.
There are California laws and the affirmative right of minors to access care, and then there's also the fact that emergency contraception has in the past been subject to other restrictions. But in 2013, the FDA had gotten rid of all of these restrictions, and so they formally approved emergency contraception to be available over the counter with no age restriction.
And here in the state, minors do not need their parents' permission to get medical care to prevent pregnancy, including access to emergency contraception. Karen Adams, KCBS.
I have seen the future, and I like most of what I see. This is Jeff Gilbert with the Car Chronicles Test Drive. Rivian's R1T pickup is an opportunity to reinvent the pickup truck for the electric era. Top selling points, power, 300 miles plus range, lots of storage space. That includes the front, a gear tunnel underneath, and storage under the bed. Interior is luxurious, as with the fit of vehicle that starts in the 70s and will often sell in the 80s. The dual motor vehicle that Rivian let me try out at 535 horsepower, but you can go quad motor and get 835 horses. For a startup, the Rivian R1T shows us something that's a great beginning. Let's give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. With a Car Chronicles Test Drive, I'm Jeff Gilbert, CBS News.
There's a crash, Highway 12, Sassoon City. We get the details now from Frank Minnick at the traffic desk.
Yeah, it's eastbound 12 at Pennsylvania Avenue in Sassoon City. We have a report of a car that struck a pole with a traffic light on it. The traffic light is now out of commission, and we apparently have some wires that may be down and hanging over the roadway. Again, that's eastbound 12 at Pennsylvania Avenue. We have a problem in Fairfield. It's eastbound 80 at Sassoon Parkway. Not in Sassoon City, but in Fairfield. We have a hit-and-run crash. One car is still on the roadway. The CHP looking for the car that did the hitting, but no indication that we have lanes blocked. The KCBS phone force number is open for traffic tips at 415-391-KCBS, 415-391-5227. And your next update is at 12:38 on the traffic leader KCBS. We'll continue to see mostly cloudy skies overnight and through Sunday with a continued chance of light rain. Overnight lows mid-40s to low 50s, highs later today in the low to mid-60s. Traffic and weather together on the 8th on All News 106.9 and AM 740 KCBS.
As an educator, Mr. Nelson's teachings are still being quoted in schools.
Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world.
Mr. Nelson taught hope.
Everyone can rise above their circumstances if they are dedicated and passionate.
And giving our best effort.
It's always impossible until it's done.
Mr. Nelson Mandela's teachings not only united a nation, they inspire us today. Inspiration. Pass it on from PassItOn.com.
You've heard it said, he's a diamond in the rough. Or maybe, diamonds are forever. Here's something else I've learned about diamonds. They're just pieces of coal put under pressure for a long, long, long time. So, when I start feeling like I want to give up, I think about that little piece of coal. And if that piece of coal can make something of itself by not giving up, so can I. Persistence is in you. From PassItOn.com. News that matters to you. Around the Bay, around the world, around the clock. All News 106.9 and AM 740 KCBS.
It's Sunday, December 3rd, 2023. Coming up on KCBS, Los Angeles police say they have arrested a man they think killed 3 homeless people. California congressional members are working to get relief for those who live near noisy airports, and a study reveals the state is failing to provide students in juvenile detention with high-quality education. I'm Peter Finch. The time is 12:31.
CBS News Brief. Israel pounds targets in the southern Gaza Strip and orders more neighborhoods designated for attack to leave. Vice President Harris says the fighting needs to end quickly.
We must accelerate efforts to build an enduring peace. And that begins with planning for what happens the day after the fighting ends.
Police say a suspected killer that they believe was preying on the unhoused in Los Angeles is already in custody for his connection to a separate killing earlier in the week. LAPD Chief Michael Moore.
At a time of crisis, one of our most vulnerable populations were being victimized. That under the leadership of Mayor Bass, the city and county of Los Angeles came together.
Home buyers facing high prices and high mortgage rates. Realtor Michael Latman.
More home sellers will elect to put their homes on the market because of A, the reduced rates, and B, because they're tired of putting their life on hold.
CBS News Brief on Matt Piper.
Early on a Sunday morning, our news watch continues on KCBS. Noisy airplanes flying into the Bay Area can be a real headache for neighbors living near those airports. KCBS's Mike DeWald reports a new effort in Congress looks to provide a little relief.
5 California lawmakers are putting forward a series of bills impacting access, flight paths, and overall decision-making when it comes to noise. Representative Kevin Mullen's SNORE Act looks to make it easier for those impacted by noise near SFO to insulate their homes by adding things like double-pane windows.
We want to make more homes eligible for noise mitigation efforts.
Mullen says many of the noise boundaries that were established are now sorely outdated. This effort aims to prepare for what's next.
Much of this effort is designed to look at what's happening in the future, more and more international flights, bigger airplanes.
He acknowledges that SFO is a key component of the economy and says the airport has been receptive to the conversation.
There's hotel revenue, it's good for our San Mateo County economy, but we deal with the byproducts of being so close to a booming international airport.
Another bill would limit overnight airport access between 10 and 7. Mike DeWald, KCBS.
Last year's winter storms caused some temporary delays and BART cars to be derailed. KCBS's Karen Creighton has an update on what the transportation agency is doing to prepare for this year.
This weekend, BART is pausing service between Glen Park and Daly City stations to remove trees that could fall on train tracks in severe weather. BART is implementing free buses for riders to bridge the gap between stations, and the agency says it could cause up to 30-minute delays for riders traveling through Glen Park, Balboa Park, and Daly City.
Our experience last year taught us that we really need to tackle this before the storms get here.
That's Jim Allison, BART's media relations manager. He says this is one of the final weekends of the year to get this work done.
Last winter we had 2 trains derailed because of downed branches of trees. We had up to 8 more delays that were caused by winter storms. So we're embarking on the largest hazardous tree removal effort in BART's history.
Karen Creighton, KCBS.
Former President Trump is performing historically well among Black and Hispanic voters. KCBS's Jennifer Hodges has more on the increase in numbers when it comes to non-white voters and support for the former president.
A number of polls in recent weeks have shown Trump performing historically well among the Black community. Back in 2020, he took just 8% of Black voters, but the polls recently show him at 20%.
And that's not just people who are considered lower class or impoverished, but even middle class Black people. They felt that Trump's economic policies were beneficial, whether true or untrue.
Dante King is a human resources management consultant and also the author of The 400-Year Holocaust. Recently, Hispanic voters have trended towards the GOP. No Republican presidential candidate in the past 50 years has approached receiving 20% of the Black vote. Jennifer Hodges, KCBS.
Young Bay Area workers are looking for housing in creative ways. KCBS's Kathy Whitman reports on how they're making their money go further.
Workers just out of school, like Gen Z and millennials, those in their late 20s and 30s, are turning to renting in record numbers. Doug Ressler with Yardy Matrix and Rent Cafe just released results of a study on what people in this age group are doing about housing. He says most still aren't able to purchase a home right now.
To be able to save somewhere around 20 or 30K as a down payment, you don't do that in 12 months.
Between the high cost of homes and rising interest rates, young people are opting for a nice place to live in newly built high-rise apartment buildings.
They're going in next to Caltrans. They're also looking at grocery retail around it.
And the buildings offer amenities like workout rooms, patios, and in-unit laundry. These units offer an alternative, especially for millennials who need to stretch their budgets.
Because they have other considerations other than housing that are really impacting the budget, especially with inflation. Food, healthcare, childcare.
Kathy Whitman, KCBS.
Officials in Sunnyvale are considering a property transfer tax ballot measure for a second time. The San Jose Spotlight is reporting that Sunnyvale City Council Tuesday voted 5-1 to discuss putting a property transfer tax on the November 2024 ballot. Council members will begin discussing the details of the tax early next year. If ultimately approved by voters, the tax would bring in more revenue into the city to help meet service and budget needs. Sunnyvale City Council previously discussed a property transfer tax in 2022, but the last-minute proposal was deadlocked and never made it onto the ballot.
At Johns Hopkins, I'm Elizabeth Tracy. Alcohol is ubiquitous, especially as we approach the winter holidays. Dennis Antoine, an alcohol use disorder or AUD expert at Johns Hopkins, says with something that's around seemingly all of the time, it's important to assess your own relationship to alcohol use.
Alcohol use is very, very prevalent. If you look at the statistics, approximately 85% or more of the population have actually had a drink over the course of their lifetime as an adult. That age is getting lower and lower, with 12-year-olds and teens getting access in different ways. If you look at the amount of people who've had a drink within the past year, it goes down to about 60 to 65%. How many people have a drink in the past month? It's still around 50% for women. But the question is, what is disorder? And disorder is